I'm Susan Marshall, and I'm the Adult Services Librarian at the Hopkinton Public Library. I have had the most fabulous 2 years of my life working at the library and learning about the history and the treasures in Hopkinton. And I've discovered that one of the finest treasures in Hopkinton is Paul Annunziata, who lived 2 doors down from the library, grew up here. And today he's going to give us a hop, skip, and a jump journey or a stroll through Hopkinton's history from the 50s, maybe mid-50s on, and tell us a little bit about the town. And I can't wait. Paul, are you ready to go with me? And
I'm ready to do a hop, skip, and a jump down memory lane.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you. Hey Paul, I'm so excited to see what all the stories you're going to tell me about the town. I haven't lived here very long, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Well, we're going to cover the area of the 50s and the early 60s of when I was a young lad, and we're going to talk about the businesses and where I grew up and where I used to play.
Oh, wow.
So this is going to be a real hop, skip, and a jump down memory lane.
I'm sure we were hop, skipping, and jumping back in those days, but today we'll take a stroll.
This is the center school. I didn't attend the Hopkinton schools. I went to parochial schools.
Oh, okay.
St. Mary's in Milford, and a few families, the O'Neills, the Delettis, Mary Howard, the Chesmores. We went to St. Mary's in Milford, the nuns, and also the Sacred Heart School.
Okay.
And I didn't really enter the Hopkinton school system until my freshman year. But anyway, thinking back here, the Kiwanis Club was Kids Day, and they had a lot of terrific things for kids on Kids Day. And they had set up bricks and made an obstacle course for bicycles.
Okay.
Now, the Kiwanis Club, they did have a carriage parade, and they had a bicycle parade for the boys, and all kinds of candy and different things and different functions, which was a great thing.
Oh, that's great.
But the bike rodeo was very important to me because I love bicycles and motorcycles and cars.
Right, right.
So to win this bike rodeo was like winning a racing.
Oh, wonderful.
So
now, it was right here, or was this building here? Or?
It was right here. The building was here. This addition is new. That was not here. And they had set up bricks and made an obstacle course.
Oh, neat.
And of course, I lost points because I didn't have a chain guard, and I didn't have any fenders on my bike. But I was able to manipulate everything and do a great job.
Oh,
but anyway, this is new here, this end of the building.
Okay.
And this was not here when we used to play. And down here on the right, they had a big brick incinerator that was shaped, you know, and big steel doors. And they used to burn everything from the, you know, probably trash, papers, whatever, in here. Back here, in the back, when we get here, we had, they had monkey bars, they had swings, they had a merry-go-round, they had slides, they had seesaws, and they always had this hill here. Now back here, we used to come here to play, and I would buy these airplanes, balsa wood airplanes that you put together for a quarter at the 5 and 10. And you could fly them, you know, and they were nice. Then I decided that we should get more sophisticated. And I went to Framingham to Joe Brown's Hobby Shop, which was down next to the Gorman Theater in Framingham. I thumbed down there, and we pooled the money together, and I bought an 049 Cox gas airplane. And of course, you had to glow the engine to get it going and put fuel in it. And you had these long fishing lines that went on the rudders, and you had a little handle. Well, the throttle valve was wide open, so that when the plane took off...
This is the first time,
This is the first time, and the kids were all there with me because we had pulled all the money together. So anyway, the plane took off, and I'm flying, and the thing is like this, and like this, and like this, and like this. Finally, I got so dizzy, I fell over, and the plane crashed into the school.
Oh my God.
And of course they were all mad at me because I wrecked the plane. But anyway, that's the story
So you
of
were
that.
the only one that got a turn in essence.
Well, I actually got my father's adhesive tape. I went back to Joe Brown's. I got a new propeller.
Oh my God.
And the kid that was really making fun of me, he tried it and he nosedived it, and that was the end of the plane. There was no more.
Oh wow. That's great. Great.
And later on, when I get into my father bought me a couple of go-karts. When I get into the go-karts, this was an area I used to drive the go-kart.
Okay.
But it became a problem with the noise and the
bet.
police, so
Yep.
I kind of had to leave here.
Oh wow, that sounds like lots of fun.
So we had a lot of fun here. And of course, you know, with the swings and the seesaws and
Right.
all of that, it was a nice place to come
Those
to play.
ladder things.
Oh yeah, the monkey bars. We used to walk across the top. That was very dangerous
Yeah, that would be
because if you fell,
yeah, you hurt yourself.
yeah, you were going to get hurt.
Oh my.
This was always a very stately house.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And a lady, I don't know in the 50s because it changed, but back in the late 40s was Betty Kelly was her name.
Okay.
And but I'm pretty sure that changed and other people lived there. This is 1 Ash Street,
Oh yeah.
and this was called the Community Center
Oh.
or the Athletic Building.
Oh,
it had
nice.
many names, but as a kid we called it the gym.
The gym. Okay.
There was a gymnasium in here. It was a school, the
Right.
4th and 5th grade, way back.
Wow.
And
That's big.
they had a gymnasium with 2 balconies. And you could sit up on the balcony and look down
Right.
on either side. And as kids, there'd always be basketballs. And then we'd come here, the place was open. You go in and play basketball.
Wow.
And I was so small that I had to take the ball and go like that. So I walked up into the balcony and they'd throw me up the ball and I'd
Throw it
drop it in. They accused me of cheating.
Uh-oh. Did you make the basket?
I made the basket.
Oh,
Oh,
good.
yeah, I made the basket. They said, "You're cheating. You can't do that." Sure, I can.
All right. Good job. You get it
And
done.
down here, of course, living on Main Street and around this area,
Right.
you get to travel around as a kid.
Yeah.
And there was a cemetery down here, and we'd come over every once in a while because it was interesting. We called it the tombs.
Oh.
And at one point, somebody had, not us, somebody had opened one of the metal doors. There was metal doors
Right.
that were in front of the tomb, the entrance. And somebody had opened one, and it was still partially open.
Okay.
And we went over, as kids, naturally,
Yeah,
to
right.
investigate.
Investigated.
And there were skeletal remains in there.
Ooh.
And there was a skull and other bones. That was enough for us, so
Yep.
we left in a hurry, and I never
good.
went back there. That was one place I didn't
Didn't
want to
wanna
have
go.
anything to
Okay,
do
good,
with.
good.
And that was that. Of course, this was the tavern up here.
Oh, a tavern. Okay.
Yeah, this was a tavern.
But not in your time.
Not in my time, way back.
Way back. Okay.
Yeah. And it was always famous as a kid because we heard George Washington slept here.
Oh.
We heard he slept here. I don't know if he slept here or he just went in for a drink or what. But him and Daniel Webster, I guess.
Wow. It looks like it is an old building, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
1745.
Yeah. So you didn't hang out at this building because
No, oh no. No. And then of course you have the doughboy over there, the soldier.
Oh, yes.
The doughboy, a lot of respect for the doughboy, even as kids. This was like a sacred landmark, and we just didn't, you didn't go near it.
Oh,
you know?
really?
But it was very fascinating how large the soldier
it was
was.
for you, yeah.
Quite a monument.
It is, still.
Still.
All right, so now we're going to go across this busy, what is now a busy street. I don't know whether it was busy back in your day or not, but
This
It is
is the
certainly busy.
cemetery here.
Oh, wow.
Congregational
Yep.
Church, the cemetery.
Thank you.
As we were talking, I never came in the cemetery that I can remember, and I don't ever remember in any cemetery doing any destruction.
That's great. That's
yeah,
great. Yeah.
we just didn't.
Okay.
I don't know. There was respect. I think that's
wonderful.
how you're bred and raised
Yeah,
too.
yeah, I hope so.
And of course, you had the starting line for the Boston Marathon.
Right.
And the Boston Marathon was a big thing in Hopkinton even back then.
Oh, wonderful.
All the townspeople, basically, that, you know, some people were working, would all show up. And of course, there wasn't that many runners back then.
That's what I
There's
hear.
thousands and thousands today.
Right.
And back then, you know, you had 100.
Oh, my God.
Wasn't very many.
That's amazing. It's hard to imagine, really.
Yeah. Now, if you were a teenager and you wanted to have some fun,
Okay.
Saturday night, this was the place
Oh,
to be.
really? Oh,
The
wow.
Congregational Church. They had the Pilgrim Fellowship sponsored the Teen Canteen,
Oh, wow. That's great.
which were referred to as interfaith
Uh-huh.
an interfaith dance,
Okay.
because it was a Congregational Church, but any faith could come here.
Right.
But this was the place to be on a Saturday night. And Officer Timothy Sullivan, he'd be at the
He'd be
door,
there.
keeping
And was
everybody.
this the door right here, or?
I think it was
Yeah.
right here.
Okay,
Yes, this
okay.
door here. And he'd be there. It was 50 cents to get in.
Okay.
Maxie Royal was the disc jockey.
Oh,
He'd
wow.
spin the records. And it was a terrific place to go. And of course, you know, the girls would be on one side and the boys on the other
Yeah.
side. And, you know.
Now, did you have to take your shoes off? Was it a real
No.
sock hop? No.
No,
Okay.
no. You didn't have to take your shoes off.
And did you used to go somewhere for pizza afterwards, or?
Yeah, Carboni's restaurant. Most people went there. That was a big thing to go down
After
there to
there.
get a pizza and a soda.
Yeah. Okay.
This was the John Warren Masonic Lodge. We referred to it as the Masonic Temple.
Okay.
And it was always a very secretive place. Like, we didn't go near it.
Oh,
I
yeah?
never went up on the steps because, I don't know, it was very mysterious.
Okay.
And then this is the back of the Masonic Temple.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And those stairs were on this side.
Okay.
And this was the first date that I ever had.
Oh,
I was
my
about
goodness.
9 or 10 years old. And it was the porch like that. And I asked the girl to come and meet me here. And I went into Brown and Smith's. I got 2 7-ounce Coca-Colas and some State Line potato chips.
Oh my
And
God.
we sat up there on the porch and had the Cokes and talked, and it was like very special for me.
Special. Oh,
Yeah, it was
nice. That's really
was my
cool.
first date. The moon, it was a beautiful place
Oh
to
really?
be.
Oh my gosh.
And the reason I picked it was because it was a scary place
Place
and
that
nobody
nobody
would
would
come here. So I could be alone. So it was great.
Great.
There was a walkway and a black railing right here. And back here there was an office, Dr. Jane Denton.
Oh, okay.
She was a lady doctor that came to Hopkinton. She stayed a few years,
Okay.
her and her mother. She took care of her mother, and she stayed, I don't know, 3 or 4 years maybe, and then she left.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
nice to know.
This was originally the Hopkinton Savings Bank. This section here.
Right here.
This was one building.
Right.
And one business, and then another business
Business,
over
okay.
here. And this was the Hopkinton Savings Bank, and then later on it changed to the Holliston Hopkinton Savings
Okay,
Bank.
wow.
And of course you know what it is
Now
now.
it's Middlesex. Okay.
Right. This portion of the building was DP Day Store.
Oh.
And the DP Day Store was like an old Army and Navy store.
Okay.
Mr. Day and Clayton Waite, they sold everything. Shoes, flashlights, watches, you name it, you could find it in here. It was like a real general store.
Oh wow.
And the ladder He had a ladder for the shoes,
Right,
because he had the different sizes racked up. And the ladder was on wheels.
Right.
It would roll, and he'd climb up the ladder and get. And when he wasn't looking, I'd get on the ladder and jump up and slide all the way down.
He must have known you were going to do that every time, right?
Then
Now-
this became Day Pharmacy.
Day
Fred
Pharmacy.
Murphy's Day Pharmacy.
Okay, now where was the doorway in the center and you went two directions?
There was a doorway for each one.
okay,
This
okay.
was like, two separate with a
Store,
doorway,
okay.
entrance and entrance.
Oh, cool.
What I used to do is I used to wait. I knew certain people had cars that I really loved,
Oh,
like Barry Smith's Mill.
okay.
He had a 62 Chevy Impala. It was a 409 cubic inch 4-speed Honduras maroon convertible. Beautiful car. And I used to wait here for him, Jimmy Picciarello, Phil Cookingham, 55 Thunderbird.
Wow.
And I'd go out in the street as a kid and sort of get in front of them, make them stop, and ask them to take
glad they
me
did.
and ask them to take me for a ride.
Oh my goodness.
And I knew the nights that they'd usually show up, so I'd be here waiting, and they knew it, and they knew that I loved cars, and they would take me for a ride.
That's great.
So it was good. Back in the day, this was Uses, and it changed to Brown and Smith. And Brown and Smith, Billy Smith and John Smith, they ran it, and of course, it became a nickname, Pinchy's.
Pinchy's?
Yeah, Pinchy's.
And why was
'cause,
that?
Well, Billy Smith was known to be a little tight with his money, I guess. I don't know, it was just the kid. But it was referred to as Pinchy's
Pinchy's,
or
that's
Pinchy
funny.
Smiths. But a lot of the kids hung out here. It was a main focal point of Main Street, so everybody kind of congregated here.
And what kind of store was it?
It was a newspaper store,
Oh.
had a luncheonette.
Oh,
But
wow.
one thing, he had all the papers, the Framingham News back then,
Right,
and the Boston Herald, and I believe the Globe. And the kids had paper routes.
Oh,
So
okay.
they'd be sorting all the papers out and have the paper bags, and kids would get on their bicycle, or maybe their father would
Right.
drive them, and they'd throw the newspapers all over the porch.
And magazines.
And the one thing about this place that I remember the most is the magazines.
Oh, okay.
He had 2 magazine racks, both sides, from this end to the other
Wow.
end, of every conceivable magazine you'd want to look at as a kid.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, incredible.
Oh, that's
Incredible.
wonderful.
And they had the best sandwiches. If you wanted a crab meat sandwich,
Oh, wow.
it was real crab meat. There
Oh,
was
my
no
goodness.
shells ground in it, and it was this thick. He had a beautiful sandwiches
How
here.
about ice cream sodas? or
Ice cream
milkshakes
sodas,
or-
hot fudge sundaes, English muffins, any way you wanted them.
Did it have the stools?
Yeah, it
sit on
had the stools and it had a counter all
Oh
the
my
way
God.
down.
Oh,
yeah.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I wish I were here. Okay. And that was this whole space, you think, right here? Most
Yes.
of the space?
From there,
All the way to here?
To
okay.
here.
All right.
of course, it's been redone.
Yep.
I just want to make a point here. This was the division of Main Street for kids. Brown and Smith was like the upper part of the division of Main Street. You know, the kids in Church Street, Hayden Rose Street, that end, myself, my brother Joey, and myself. This was
You're hanging.
the dividing. This was the hangout for the
Okay.
upper end of Main Street.
Okay, interesting.
Now, this was the town hall.
Oh, yep.
And this was a great place to come as a kid. Number one, I want to point out to you, over here was like a bulletin board. There was one here and one on the other end of the building.
Okay.
And what they did was, back in the 50s, they put up notices.
Oh.
They'd staple them.
Oh, my goodness.
So they, if somebody wanted to know what was going to go on in the town, or somebody filed a permit, you came and you read it right on this bulletin
right
board.
outside in the elements.
Right outside here and down
Over
there. There was 2.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's
Now,
pretty
as a
cool.
kid, what I remember is Halloween.
Halloween, okay.
Halloween was a great time to be a kid, and of course to go around and get the candy. And there was a lady on Grove Street, and she made candy apples
Oh,
and
wonderful.
caramel popcorn.
Oh.
and it was to die for.
I bet.
And I went trick or treat, and I went out back and I changed the mask, and I came back and she says, "Weren't you just here?" And I says, "I can't help it." I put the mask up. I said, "I can't help it. You have the most delicious popcorn." And she goes, "Okay, here, take one, get out of
that's
here."
sweet.
But anyway, the police car would come on Halloween night, you know, just sort of getting dark. The police car would come, one fire truck. They took all the hoses off the top of the fire truck, put all the kids on.
Oh
They
my
made sure you were safe and secure.
Right.
They go down Main Street.
Okay.
They go up Grove Street, across Maple Street,
Right.
Hayden Row, and back down. And put another set of kids on, another
wonderful.
group, and go again. And then you go upstairs on the second floor, and they had a dance floor up there and a stage. They used to have minstrel shows,
Oh, my goodness.
and fireman's ball, policeman's ball, and they'd have a scary movie.
Oh, wow. Isn't that
So
wonderful?
it was great. Downstairs was the jail. I don't think they ever put me
I
in
didn't
the
realize that.
I don't
Wow.
think they ever put me in the jail. I can't
my
remember.
Oh, this is wonderful. I love that story. It's hard to do today, but that would be.
They had like a hallway here, an alcove, and then the doors.
You actually went in and out here?
We would just sit there and
Oh, I
play.
see. Oh, it was
a
just
play.
open
It was
inside.
open
Okay,
right there. See, they filled it
Right,
in.
I got that.
But
Okay.
there was an opening, and then like a little hall,
And that
and
would be
then
a
the
place to
doors.
stay.
Now this was the First National store,
Oh.
and Red was the manager. Jerry Long worked here, and Dickie Westgate from Westboro. And Red would smoke a cigar, and he had the white apron on. A lot of the store managers wore an apron, a white
really?
apron,
Okay.
yeah. And they had sawdust on the floor. They used some kind of a duster tractor to, at the end of the night or the end of the week, they'd sweep the floor. And I used to get a kick out of the coffee machine because people would come in and grind coffee beans, and the bags were like red and green and blue.
Okay.
And I'd wait for the different people to come in and do that.
Okay, now this was a coffee shop,
This
you said?
this was the First National store.
Yeah, but what was it?
One.
I mean, First National Store, what type of store was that?
Oh, it was a grocery store.
grocery store.
The
Okay,
First
that's what I
National
didn't-
Grocery
okay.
Store. Then it changed to Pete Kentel's Bakery. And Pete Kentel made donuts and fresh bread and all of that. And as a kid, I remember he had the first 64 GTO, a white GTO.
He
Pontiac.
must have been doing well
He
then.
was doing well. And then we had Edison Light was here.
Okay.
And then
Right
it changed from Edison Light to the Framingham Trust Company. A bank was here, Mrs.
wow.
Chartier, Ruth Chartier, a very nice woman. And then Nancy Penny McMillan, the lovely lady, came and been here ever since.
Okay,
My
that's
mother used
wonderful.
to have her hair done
Oh,
here.
wow.
Yep. This here was Fred Murphy's Rexall drugstore. Okay, now Fred Murphy eventually moved up to the DP Day store,
Oh.
aside of the bank. That was Day Pharmacy. The Rexall drugstore and Day Pharmacy is the same person, Fred
Okay.
Murphy, the druggist.
Okay.
I used to come in here because his son, he had boys, his son Jimmy Murphy would work behind the counter. There was a little counter here and some stools, and Fred Murphy would be in the back filling the prescriptions, and I'd come in here to get a hot fudge sundae. And he would put 2 big scoops of hot fudge on there
Oh,
for
my
me, and
goodness.
I'd say, "Jimmy, load it up," and it would be dripping all
Oh,
over
my
the
gosh.
place.
Oh,
But it
that's
was the
wonderful.
greatest. Now, the other thing we did on Memorial Day, we used to march as kids. You had to have a white shirt and a tie and march in the parade. Mrs. Smith would lead these group of kids, and then when it was all done, we'd come into Fred Murphy's for a hoodsie with the wooden spoon.
Oh my gosh.
Yep, that was the treat.
Oh, wonderful.
Back in 1957, this was a hardware store.
Oh, okay.
But it was the Hopkinton Supply Company. That was the name of the building in 1906, and that was the building. That was the building in 1957.
Oh.
And Herbie Rifkin ran this hardware store. He didn't stay long, and then he was gone.
Oh, okay.
It was vacant for a while. Now, way back, people kind of doubt what I say, but I'm going to go for it anyway.
Okay.
I was very, very small. There was a door here
Right.
and a door here.
Okay.
These were two separate businesses.
Oh,
This door was not here.
okay.
The doors were here and here.
Okay, all right.
Jack Danahy's barber shop was in here. The Edison Light Company was in here.
Oh,
And you came in here and you bought light bulbs and you paid your bill. Over here was a wooden structure. The only thing that was here was the First National Store.
right.
The Lovely Lady Salon and Photographic Images was not there. Okay,
back then,
those
okay.
buildings were not there back then. There was a wooden structure there.
Oh.
Whether it burned down or it fell down, I don't know.
Okay, and then they built.
Then
okay.
they did a facelift to the First National, and then they built these two buildings.
Right.
And that's when Edison Light moved from
Over
here
there.
to up there.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
All right.
All
Woo.
right.
Nice.
This was Walcott Street.
So,
Okay. And this was where Jack Danahy's barber shop was, where he moved from there to here.
okay.
Okay, and then you had Mary Briggs, Kathy Briggs, the country cleaners.
Oh,
You dropped off your laundry here, and the business was in Ashland. They transported it,
Okay,
you know,
right,
took
right.
it and dropped it off. Jack Danahy was the barber for as long as I can remember, actually having my first haircut here. And he was a remarkable man in the fact that he changed his whole life around, that he had a problem with alcohol. And
Well, that's
he
great.
did have meetings in the back of the barber shop.
yeah.
And he did a lot of great things and helped a lot of people with that problem. And he was a great, terrific friend of my father's.
No.
The door was here. There was apartments upstairs.
Okay.
This was Danny Colella's supermarket.
Oh, wow.
This is where it
Cabela's.
was.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and Danny Colella, he was great. Sawdust on the floor again. And then he moved, and they built the new Colella's over here on Main and Grove. And the Village Toy Store came in here.
Wow.
Now, the Village Toy Store sold model toys and trucks and not really a 5 and 10, more toys.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And the Pierces ran that, and they were a nice family. I
nice.
I
That's
remember
great.
them, Mr. and Mrs. Pierce.
Wonderful.
And then we had the Central House, which was the tap.
Oh.
Yeah,
Bar?
Charlie Hill, the Central House.
Okay.
Now, down in here, there was a driveway.
Oh, okay.
And this part of the Central House, there was an apartment in there. And there was an individual in there, and his name was Al Tyler. And he drove a GMC tractor trailer truck.
Oh, wow.
And they had a show on TV called Cannonball. And he had the same type of truck as
Oh,
that
my
show.
goodness.
It was about 2 truck drivers that traveled all around the country.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I kept asking my father, I love trucks, to go with Al on one of his trips.
Yeah.
And he used to haul Budweiser beer, Middletown, Connecticut. So on and on and on, and finally my father decided to let me go. So Al was a dapper Dan. He's always neat, clean, dressed as a pin, shoes shine.
Wow.
The truck was immaculate, even though it was older. And so we took off to go to Middletown, Connecticut, and I got down West Main Street to the ice house
Yeah.
where the pond is,
Yeah.
and he pulled over, and I thought he was getting out of the truck to check something. Maybe the tire was, you know, the air in the
right,
tire,
yeah.
light out.
Okay.
Well, he came over to the passenger side and he said, "Move over." And I just looked at him. He said, "Move over, you're driving."
Oh, my God.
And I'm about 12 or 13 years old, I kid you not. And he said, "This is the transmission, this is a Road Ranger, it's 5 speeds, you pull this button up and you get 5
Oh, my
high, you go
goodness.
over the same." Anyway, he says, "I'll shift it, you just push in the clutch when I tell you." And he used to tell me, "Don't be using my brakes, because the trailer wasn't his, so they had a lever for parking, so you used the trailer brakes,
Right. Oh,
so
my
you wouldn't.
goodness.
And I drove that truck halfway to Connecticut. It was unbelievable. Of course, I
gosh.
never told my father
I
that.
don't think I'd tell him either.
Yeah. But anyway, this was the Central House, and also the man that I remember from the Central House, his name was Charlie Chin.
Oh.
That wasn't his real name, and he was a big, big guy. And I guess the configuration of his chin, they nicknamed him
then
Charlie Chin.
Okay. Now, what was the Central House? What type of business?
The Central House was a bar room, really.
bar room,
You know,
okay.
I hate to say that. It was a
Okay.
drinking
Okay.
establishment. And then way back, it was, of course, a hotel and tavern.
Oh, right. Yeah, way back. Okay.
A tavern is a good word.
A tavern. That's good.
But there was a house here that we called the Scary House. It had beautiful large columns, and it was all overgrown, you know, with hedges.
Yeah.
And the wall was like granite blocks, that type of a wall, like long granite blocks. And it was, I was told way back, it was the Cross Farm. But it became Dwyer, and actually Fred Murphy, the druggist, bought it. And there was rumors that he was going to put a bowling alley in here, but it never came to pass.
That would have been nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You would have loved that.
That was in sort of this area.
Yeah, right here, okay.
And then we came to Woody's Friendly Superette.
Oh.
That was another little small grocery store, market
Right.
for meats and stuff. Clarence Woods.
Right in this area?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was a girl that ran the register,
Ah.
and she was very pretty. And I went in there one day and I bought some gum, and you know, I had to wait, and they had a circular thing, and I come outside and I said, gee, I want to go and see her again. So I go in again and I bought another candy bar. So anyway, he did this about 3 or 4 times. He said, weren't you just in here? And I said, if you weren't so pretty, I wouldn't keep coming in here. Anyway, then
Oh, gosh.
we came down, and right in here we had Don's Taxi.
Oh.
There was just a little opening,
Right.
and he had a little desk in there, and he ran the taxi, Don Hitchings, that became Hitchings Hardware
right, yeah,
Store,
okay.
same person.
Oh, okay.
He had Don's Taxi, he got it from the Hazens. Lloyd Hazen and Dave Hazen, his son, had it before him.
Okay.
And they turned around, and he also had a school bus, and he parked it in the back because this was all changed. But the Hildridges over there was a yard and a back area, and he used to park the school bus there. And also, a lot of people don't know this, in 1947 and 48, Don Hitchens and Harold Pentheny had the Maspinock bus lines. They had a bus
Wow.
that went from the center of town to all the Maspinock area, over where the North Pond House is and Sandy Island, all through there.
Oh, wow.
So he actually had that also. Then we came down and we had Gene Lundrigan, Gene's Barber Shop. Okay, another barber.
All
We
right.
had Jack, now we have Gene's.
Okay, right here.
Now,
Okay.
he was more modern because I'd come here to get a California crew cut.
Oh, my
And the
goodness.
California crew cut was a butch in the center of your hair, the front of your hair, and then the sides, just the sides, and the back was long.
Oh, my
So you could
goodness.
comb your hair back, but it was a butch in the middle.
Isn't that amazing?
Yep.
So he did the up-to-date haircut.
He did the up-to-date haircut.
Okay.
And then we come to the Hopkins Drug Store, Ed Cates, another pharmacist, another
Right.
druggist, and he had a luncheonette in there. But in here was Osborne's 5 and 10.
Oh.
Mr. and Mrs. Osborne.
Right.
Now, originally, they bought the cleaners that was here. There was a service station years ago, and they bought the cleaners. Mr. and Mrs. Osborne tore the building down, and they built a new building here.
Oh, wow.
And they subletted it out.
Okay.
Of course, Osborne's owned it, and they were here, but they subletted it to Eddie Katz for the drugstore,
okay.
and then the Gene Lundrigan, the barber,
here,
and Don's Taxi.
Wow.
Now the-
So it was pretty big all along.
It was pretty big.
Okay.
Yep. And Don's Taxi, the sign was here because the taxi stand was here. So if you wanted a taxi, you waited right here, and it had a sign, taxi stand, no parking,
Right.
here. Now in Katz's, he had a luncheonette, and Eddie Pat's, the druggist, would be up the back. He had a phone in there, but he had a tube tester because most of the people had just started out with tube-type TVs.
Okay.
And if the tube was bad, you'd come down and you'd plug the tube in, and then you push a button and run a test, and if it said no good, you open the door on the bottom and he had a bunch of tubes down in there.
Oh, that's
so
amazing.
you could do that.
Yeah, wow. All right, this is really interesting. I can't wait to hear the rest.
This is Cedar Street.
Right, okay.
This is where the Hopkinton Post Office used to be.
Oh my goodness, here.
And Tom Brown was the postmaster.
Oh, right, okay.
And Tom Brown was the brother of Walter Brown.
Okay.
Walter Brown Arena, the Boston Celtics, the Marathon. They lived down on Hayden Rose Street. Yep, the starter of the Boston
Okay.
Marathon.
All right,
Now, Joe Gass had owned the building.
Okay.
And Joe Gass had owned the mobile gas station across the street.
Okay.
Now, the post office was in one end, and then they had an entrance going upstairs. And Dr. Carnicelli, who was a dentist, was up there, along with Joe Gassett and his family lived there.
Oh my goodness.
On the other side, because most of these buildings were broken up where you had like two businesses and then a doorway in the center of the two
okay.
businesses, and then people lived upstairs that either ran the business or they rented out the apartments. Now, Emma McBride's the Hopkinton shop was there. It was a ladies' attire,
Right,
ladies'
okay,
clothes.
okay.
So I naturally didn't frequent it. but anyway, then she sold it out to when Marion Varnum took it over. But that was the Hopkinton shop.
Now, was that building up closer to the
Yes,
road, or is it way far back?
No, the building was probably where the gas pumps were.
Okay,
You know,
all right.
maybe because the sidewalk was always here in the
right,
road.
okay.
So you had to like walk to it a little bit
But
to
it's
get
close.
to it. And then, of course, the post office was moved down there.
Right, okay.
Then we came down a little further, and you had Bruno Polnick, and Stanley
yeah,
Polnick.
right.
And Bruno Polnick was a landscaper, put in many lawns and took care of the cemeteries. And you'd see him trucking down the street on his tractor.
Okay.
You know, going, stopping traffic and everything else. He'd putt along. And Bruno and Stanley lived with Mrs. Kilburn.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yep, and they grew up, and it was a big, beautiful house. And the next business was Pee Wee's Diner.
Oh,
Now, it was Pee Wee's Lunch, the sign, but we called it Pee Wee's Diner.
okay.
And Pee Wee was kind of a small man, but he had the biggest forearms you could ever imagine. And he had an anchor tattooed here and an anchor tattooed here, and wear a sailor hat.
Oh my goodness.
Okay? And we used to call him like Popeye.
Okay, that
Now,
sounds
he
good.
owned a junkyard down on Granite Street. Before the Cornell Club, you made a right onto Granite Street and past the cemetery and up around a few corners. As a kid, I'd ride my bicycle down there, and I'd ask Pee Wee if I could sit in the cars and pretend I was driving. And I'd spend the day down there
Driving.
jumping from
Oh
one
my
car to
gosh.
another. Later it became Hutch's Restaurant.
Phones in for people to keep up with you.
Louis Fluma's. This was Louis Fluma's before Mr. Doyle.
Okay.
Mr. Doyle was a teacher at Hopkinton High School, as you know,
really?
and
Oh.
was involved in the athletic association. But Louis Fluma loved golf, and he was great in mathematics. And when I had a little problem with mathematics, I'd come down here, and of course Louis was a patient of my father's, and Louis would help me with math, geometry and trig and that type of thing. And he'd get me a Coca-Cola because he had a liquor store, but he had Coke.
Oh, good.
And I'd
That's
have a
nice.
Coke, and he'd teach me math. But
Wow.
he was a very nice man. I liked him, the whole family.
That's great.
And then up above here, as I said again, we had two businesses. Over here was Duffy the Cobbler.
Oh,
And Duffy the Cobbler was from Milford, and he'd do the shoes.
right.
And he had a chair that you'd set up on and like put your feet on, so
Yeah.
that like a shoe shine
Yeah.
chair. And he taught me how to shine shoes.
Oh, wonderful.
And I'd come here almost 3 times a week from school and shine my shoes.
Shoes, oh
I
my
just
goodness.
loved to have shiny shoes.
Right.
So anyway, but up here lived a man by the name, nicknamed him Ropey Pearson. And Ropey Pearson, I don't know if he was a plasterer or what, but he had a bag of tools, okay? And he had an old big black Packard car, and he had a parrot. And they talked to the parrot, and they had a story about him, actually a song about him coming down Bear Hill like 70 miles an hour in this old Packard with the parrot on his shoulder, talking to the parrot. So that was the story of Ropey Pearson.
So in the shoe place, did he also repair shoes?
Oh,
Or he was a
absolutely.
cobbler? Okay.
Soles, heels.
Okay.
And then one time I came down and I said, Duffy, you know those things that they put on the corner of your heel? They're called taps.
Yeah,
And he
yeah.
says, you want them on? I says, yeah, when I go to school, I'm going to go click, click, clicks.
I bet they loved you
He put them,
too.
oh yeah, they love me coming down the hall.
I
Around the
remember that
around the
thing.
corner was Dr. Carnicelli. He moved, the dentist.
Right.
He came from Joe Gassett's and then he moved over here.
Yeah,
Okay?
Wow.
Now, on this corner here was Jimmy Phipps,
Oh, right.
and he sold antiques. He sold cars, used cars, a couple of cars he had, but he reminds me of American Pickers, the show on TV,
Right, yeah.
and he had all kinds of little knickknacks and antiques.
Wow.
But he was here, this business was here.
Wow. Okay. You couldn't have an antique car sitting there, though. Did you have it in the back, or you had to go see?
No, they weren't antiques. They were like 50, a couple of cars.
Oh, they were
More-
just
yeah, they were in the
cars.
50s.
Okay.
But I mean, he had more antiques, meaning
Mostly,
knickknacks
yeah,
and
right,
that.
okay.
And I don't know how long he was actually there because it's way back that I remember him.
Okay.
76. This used to be over here was Mrs. Minkle.
Back there.
Was the kindergarten.
Uh-huh.
Mrs.
Oh.
Minkle. There was a Breezy Acres kindergarten
Oh,
school.
wow.
Yeah, it was here. And then we're coming up to Paul Phipps's house
Okay.
where I got my insurance.
Right. Even back in
My
your time,
well,
there
my
was
motorcycle and the
Uh-huh.
cars, and you know, when I actually got my license. And I would consider him one of the town fathers. And when I say a town father, it's because of all the services and the organizations that
Right.
they were involved in.
Oh, that's
you know,
wonderful,
the
yeah.
Kiwanis Club being one as an
Oh, right,
example.
uh-huh.
But when I say somebody's a town father, really they were instrumental in the formation of a lot of things in town.
All right, that's great.
This was always a beautiful house with the columns.
It is pretty.
This house here was, I believe, was Fanny Zimmer's house. And what happened was she was all alone and had no relatives and was a patient of my father's.
Oh.
And she actually left the house to my dad. and my mother and father were ecstatic that they had received this property from this elderly woman, you know, that she was a nice lady. And what happened was by the time my dad paid off all her bills and everything, he lost a couple of $1,000. It cost him a couple of thousand.
Oh my gosh.
But I guess Fanny knew the right guy to leave it to.
That's right.
Now, Mayu Street, this is where Mrs. Smith that I talked about
That gave you the.
would have the parade, you know, Memorial Day
Right,
parade, but there was kids, you had to have a white shirt. And I can remember a friend of mine that I used to play with, he didn't have a white shirt.
Oh,
So I gave him one of my shirts and ties so
nice.
he could march in the parade
oh,
with me.
wonderful.
Yeah, and we'd march, and you know, of course, the Memorial Day, but there would be a group of kids. We'd be down there and go up to the Doughboy and the Common, you know, and do the ceremony. And then we'd come back, like I said, to Fred Murphy's Rexall Drugstore, and we'd have hoodsies. So
They
that
still
was for
have
the
that
kids.
Parade, you know. They
Oh,
still have
yeah.
the parade, so that's
Yeah.
great.
Now this was, we're coming upon Carl Freeze Shell gas station.
Okay.
It was here. Of course, it's now Main Street Service Center. But Carl Free had the Shell gas station here, and then it became Terry's gas station,
Okay.
and then Terry Oil Company. Tommy
Oh.
Terry and Billy Terry. Of course, I remember Jack Terry. He drove the oil truck.
Oh, wow.
'Cause they had the way back. And then he lived up on Pleasant Street, and in the back, I don't know how he did it, but he had a garage, and he could fit the oil trucks. All the oil trucks were kept on Pleasant Street in back of his garage. Now, Billy Terry used to take me up to the farm, up on where the new high school is.
Oh, right.
They had a big
Okay.
farm there,
Okay.
Terry's Farm.
Okay.
And he'd show me how to milk cows, and I'd be shoveling the manure, and he said,
Wow,
"You get
that's
right
great.
into it."
Oh, wow. You got a lot
Yeah.
of things that you got to learn. That's great.
Now in the back, there was a garage, a little small garage that was part of the Freeze house in the back, and Dave Beatty was an auto mechanic,
Okay.
and he used to repair automobiles there, and I later would work for him at Natick Ford. He was
Oh.
a service manager for Natick Ford.
Wow.
But Dave Beatty, his wife Marlene, but he would repair cars there. He had quite a little shop.
Wow, that's great.
This place here was a garage. Lindsey Thompson was his name.
Oh, wow.
Now, when I was very small, he was an elderly gent. And in the back, he had a big barn, a garage, that he repair automobiles.
Right.
And that was pretty much out of business at that time that I remember it. What I do remember is over to the side here was some red ramps that you drive a car up onto.
right, yeah.
It wasn't hydraulic, it didn't go up and down, but
yeah.
you could work underneath
Right,
the car. And then, if my recollection is correct, I thought there was a gas pump here too, an older gas pump to the back.
Right.
But that's what I remember about this
Oh.
place. But he was an elderly gent, Lindsey Thompson. This was called the grain store. And it had coal and grain and catered to farmers.
Okay.
It became Worthmore Stores, but we always called it the grain store. Charlie and Al Wright ran it. And of course the train tracks were through here.
Okay.
And then the train station was right in this area here that they restored and moved.
Right.
Okay?
Now, when you were growing up, it was not active train.
No,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
no. I may have had an inkling that there was tracks here,
Yeah.
and then they were taken up. Right. Now, on the corner of Meserve Street, down here, there was an older building. I don't know specifically what it was.
Right.
It was about the same size as the train depot,
Oh,
but it wasn't, it
Okay.
didn't have anything to do that I remember, of course, with the trains, but it
Right.
was here.
Right.
Then down here, off of Meserve Street, when I'd go with Billy Terry in the oil truck,
Right.
there was 2 tanks down here that the supply for them for
Oh,
the
for
heating oil
Okay.
and for Terry's and Cohen
Oh, I see.
oil. Now over here was Patton's Plumbing and Heating,
Okay.
Louis and Flora Bisconi,
Yeah.
and they had a plumbing and heating place. They also had oil trucks and delivered oil.
Oh,
And
wow.
in the center of the business was a small ice cream place, soft ice cream,
Oh, that's interesting.
called the Snow Cream.
Oh, wow.
And on the far end, the Woodville end,
Okay.
was a Hopkinton Drive-In Cleaners. So there was a cleaners there, and drive-in, you just sort of swung around, but that's what they called it.
Wow.
There was tracks here, but no train. And
Oh.
then the tracks were taken out and the bed remained.
Oh,
But
okay.
then it had grown in. And what they're doing now in a lot of these is clearing
Right.
the brush away, and they're making paths,
Bike
walking
paths,
paths,
walk
or bike paths,
Right.
which is great. Now this track, or the train, went all the way to Milford.
Milford, yeah.
All the way to
Okay.
Milford. Now, down on the far end, when you got behind the high school, which
Right.
a lot of people don't know, the new Hopkinton High School,
Right.
where Terry's farm was,
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
we as kids cleared all that brush out of there. Maybe we were a little ahead of our time,
Oh, my goodness.
where it's safe.
Okay,
Stay
thank
on the
you. You're
inside.
So sweet.
We were a little ahead of our time. We cleared all that brush out,
Okay.
and what we did was I decided with some other kids that we needed to go to driving school.
Oh,
This was not an authorized driving school.
okay.
My first car was a 53 Studebaker with no trunk, because the gentleman worked for Western Nurseries.
Uh-huh.
Now, I was about, I'd say 13 years old, just hitting 14 at the time.
Yep.
And what we did was we drove down these railroad beds.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, not
How
particularly...
old were you again? 14?
13, 14.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, and the other kids the same age.
Uh-huh.
And this was more towards Granite Street,
Okay.
down that
Way down.
end,
Okay,
not
yeah.
up on this end. And as kids, we had hedge clippers and stuff. We moved debris out of the way, and we just opened it up like they're doing right now.
Right, yeah, okay.
So that's why I said I think we're a little ahead of our
your
time.
time.
But anyway, we drove cars down the railroad bed. Okay, there was three of us had cars.
Where did you keep them? At home?
No,
Oh,
we kept them on Granite Street. There was an area in the railroad bed that opened up like where they did some quarry work.
all right.
And we kept them there, but it was far enough in the woods where people couldn't tell the cars were there.
Oh,
The problem was where there was a bridge, they had taken the railroad ties out of the bridge and created an opening. If you didn't get going 60 miles an hour, you weren't going to make it across.
oh my gosh.
And one of the kids decided he didn't want to go 60, so we had to get a chain and pull him out because the car was wedged.
Oh my gosh.
But
And so your parents didn't know about
no,
it? Oh, okay.
no, they did not.
Oh,
I think eventually maybe the police probably found out.
Oh, my goodness.
Because people were wondering if they were losing their mind by seeing not trains but cars go
going
down the
by.
railroad
Oh,
bed.
that is funny.
And you could go, we used to drive all the way to the Milford line. You could go, because the railroad crossed there.
Yeah.
Of course, we didn't want to go out on the road.
right.
Even though we skipped over Granite Street a little bit.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
This was the Hopkinton Food Freeze. And what it was, yeah, food freeze. What it was is you could come in here and rent a locker, a frozen food locker.
Oh, wow.
And if you shot a deer, you could bring the deer here. They had a butcher, and they'd cut it up for you. If you had vegetables, you could bring it here. And they were called, way back, they had a little notation, the Western Meat Packers.
Oh.
And Glenn Gay and Earl Bress, they were the people at that time in the 50s that I remember. There was other people before them and probably after them, but they're the two that I remember. But anyway, they used to sell also in one of their ads, SSPS goods.
Okay.
And SSPS were real fine, their products, food products, mostly canned goods,
right, yeah.
liver and different items, specialty items.
Is that local, do you think?
SSPS, no, they were a big company maybe out of Chicago.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't really
Yeah,
know,
okay.
but they always were noted for exceptional quality.
Oh, I see, okay. And that was this whole building?
And that was the building, the Food Freeze.
Interesting. Wow.
It became later the Super Hop, which was another grocery store, and that didn't last too
Oh,
long.
I see, okay.
That only lasted for a few years, and then maybe not even that. and that went out of business.
Okay.
This is the old high school. The old high school back, it was probably in the 60s, turned into Lampin Corporation.
Oh, wow.
And Lampin was a machine shop. They machinists.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In this building?
In this
Machine-
building.
Wow.
Before it became offices.
Beautiful building.
Yep. And this is Carrigan Park. And Carrigan Park is named after the Carrigan sisters. They were teachers.
Okay. Teachers at the
Yeah.
elementary school or high school? Or just one of
I
the
don't
schools
know.
there?
All I
Okay.
know is that they were teachers.
Okay.
And this became the Little League Park, Carrigan Park, for Little League.
It's wonderful.
Now, before it became Carrigan Park, there was fields here.
Uh-huh.
And we'd come and play stickball.
Oh.
We'd buy a ball that was almost like a rubber ball, but not a hard rubber ball.
Yeah.
They were like facial color, a pinkish tone.
Okay.
That you could buy at Osborne's of 5 and 10, and then we'd take Ma's mop broom and saw it off, and we'd have a couple of bats and we'd play. You know, you'd take a rock, and this was first base, and this was second base, and that's the thing I wanted to elaborate on, was that when you were young, your mother made you become very independent, because she had her agenda, vacuuming the house or whatever, cooking, doing what they did back then, and you were told to go out and play. And in
Right, I remember that
in nice
myself.
terms, you were told to get lost. And so you went out, and this was good because you had to interact with people. You had to find things to do.
Right.
Hopefully not too mischievous at
Right,
times,
exactly.
but you know, good things. So you interacted. You know, maybe you didn't want this particular kid on your team, and you know, there was a fight broke out, but it was solved. So it was problem solving, but you became very independent and know how to do things for yourself,
Right, that's
which was
good.
good, which
It is.
which carries you all through life. Now, there was 4 managers: Red Moran, Paul Phipps, the insurance that we passed. There was Bob Lewis that did the Red Sox, and Morris Sheehan. And they were the 4 coaches for the Little League teams.
Oh, wow.
And I believe there was the Braves, the Tigers, the Giants, and the Red Sox. Now, my brother Joey, who was 5 years older than me, he pitched for the Red Sox. And he was quite a pitcher.
Oh, really? Oh,
My father
wonderful.
was a pitcher too in school, in
Oh,
high school,
wow.
and he taught my brother how to pitch. My brother threw the ball so hard that his hat used to come off.
Oh, my goodness.
And it used to bother me because I'd say, well, he's not in uniform. He doesn't look right, you know, because he keep knocking the hat
Oh,
off.
that's funny.
But that was great, and I was the bat boy. We were on Bob Lewis's Red Sox.
Okay.
My brother was the pitcher, and I was the bat
Bad
boy.
boy. I think I saw a picture of your group.
Yeah,
A
I was
photograph.
showing you
Yes,
a picture.
That was wonderful. And so did y'all win, or do you? I mean,
Joey
did
was,
they win?
they won, and then, of course, then they had the Pony League, but I pitched for the farm team. That was a team I used to play up at the high school. That was before Little League, like
Oh,
the
I see.
smaller
Okay.
kids.
Oh,
And they
that's
called
cute.
it a
Yep.
farm
Oh, that's
team.
Cute.
Yeah.
I love that.
They kind of actually refer to that in Major League, you know, the farm team.
Yeah,
It's
they do.
the lower
Yep,
team.
yep.
This house was here, and there was another house here, and then Joe Pine's house.
Oh.
And Joe Pine was the fire chief.
Oh, wow.
I'll talk a little bit more about him when I get to the fire station.
Okay.
But Joe Pine owned Pine Sand and Stone. Joey Pine, Jimmy Pine,
Okay.
Virginia Pine, Margaret Pine, the family, Mrs. Pine. And he kept the trucks in the back,
Oh.
and way up that you could see looking over from Carrigan Park was the repair building. There was a building up and to the left where they did maintenance on the dump trucks. They were 10-wheeler dump trucks.
Oh, wow.
And he owned Pine Sand and Stone, and of course I love trucks. And I'd keep going over and asking him, could I go for a ride in the truck? And different ones were making up different excuses. I don't know, maybe they didn't like me. I don't know what the reason
Probably
was.
safety.
But Davy Haywood, he was a patient of Dad's, the Haywoods, and Davy Haywood would take me, and the truck he had was an International truck. They called it the Binder because of the farm equipment, and International took that, and they named it the Binder, and I would meet him up beyond the Doughboy. He'd stop the truck and I'd get in and he'd give me a ride in the
how
truck, and
nice.
nobody knew any better.
Wow.
And that was fine.
Now, the fire department, was that volunteer back then?
Yes, it was.
Right.
Now, Joe Pine's house moved up to Pleasant Street. The house was actually taken to
Oh,
Pleasant
wow.
Street. The other house that was in here, I believe, was taken up to Mount Auburn Street on the corner before the cemetery, I believe. I'm not
wow.
positive, but they moved. But Joe Pine's house, there was a fire there. On February 19th, 1964, a fire broke out in the house. And it involved the couch. And he got the sons to come down, and they were going to put the couch, they tried to put it out with water, and they were going to move it outside. And when they opened the door, the place engulfed in flames.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
this was at the front of the house. And Joe Pine, the fire chief, didn't think that Virginia, his daughter, was out of the house. And of course, the boys were in the back, and they had taken her out of the house and put her on the roof. Now, the configuration of the house, it wasn't like she was sliding down the roof. It was almost like a porch-type
Yeah,
roof
right,
that they could
okay.
set her there safely. Now, Joe Pine didn't realize that they had taken her out, and he went back into the house to get her, to get his daughter, and of course, he was succumbed, and 75% of his body was burned.
Oh, my God.
He lived for about 3 weeks after that. He was in the hospital unconscious and burned very badly, and finally passed away from his injuries of the fire. And of course, Joe Pine was the fire chief from 1947 to 1964. Before they had fire chiefs, they had fire engineers.
Oh,
And these appointed engineers would appoint who would become the fire chief. They'd sit down and decide which one they wanted to become the fire
Oh.
chief. And Joe Pine became the fire chief. Now, the fire department was mainly volunteer.
oh, okay.
You know, the siren would go off in the old fire building, and people would come, and you know, it was all volunteer.
Right,
And
yeah.
people would fight fires in their street clothes
Oh, my goodness.
and do the. But Joe Pine really was the pioneer for permanent firemen
Oh, wonderful.
and the new
Yep,
fire
yep.
station.
Oh, okay.
So really, he was the thrust behind it.
Very good.
Now, as a kid, I used to come in here because way back then it was a volunteer fire department. Maybe somebody would be in there, maybe they wouldn't. I'd go in, we'd sit in the fire trucks, we'd turn the lights on in the fire trucks, and we'd pretend we were going to a fire. And then we'd go upstairs and slide down the pole.
Oh, my gosh.
We'd put the helmet on and put everything back. And as long as you put everything back, nobody would know that you were in there. Now, my favorite truck was a 38 Ford Forest Fire truck with a canvas top.
Wow.
And it had a Ford flathead engine in it and made a lot of noise. That's why I liked it.
That's why you liked it.
And one day I came down on my bicycle, and they kept pushing me off the truck because I was just a kid. They didn't want me going to a fire. Well, this one day I waited till the truck got in the street, and I jumped on the back of the truck and I went to the fire. And I helped them pull hoses and different things. And then they found out who I was and that I was just a kid. They wouldn't let me ride back, so I had to walk from the fire back to the fire station to get my bicycle. Finally, somebody that knew me picked me up and gave me a ride.
Gosh.
Of course, this was the police station over here before they built the new police station. The police station was here. And of course, Jerry Balker was the police chief. Now, before Jerry Balker was Jackie Hildridge that I remember.
Oh, okay.
And he was the police chief.
Oh.
But Jerry Balker was the police chief, and He used to chase me around on my go-kart and kick me out of this parking lot and that parking lot. But then one day I was going down Hayden Rose Street about 50 miles an hour on my go-kart, and the police cruiser and Jerry was coming the other way. And Arthur Doucette, who was a registry man, they were together in the car. And I go down and I says, oh, there's the cruiser. So I went down in Hilltop Road. It's just down the crest. I went up Hilltop Road and I went through Mr. Carey's yard, and it was the principal of the Hopkinton High School. I went through his yard and sort of gathered a few clothes on the clothesline. This is like in the movies. And back out on the hilltop, and then, of course, down Hayden Rose Street, across Maple to the church parking lot, down through the back sidewalk into Main and into the garage where I lived, and shut the door, and they couldn't catch me.
Oh my gosh.
Neil Ambrogi's house was in here. This was
really?
another house that they took down the old fire station, and then the apartment house that was here, that was torn down to build a new fire police station. Now, the old fire station had a siren when there was a fire, and this one had blasts, like a big low, and it had different meanings for different signals and sequences.
Okay.
This was Ward's barber shop, Mr. Ward and Johnny Ward, two barbers. I used to come here.
Okay.
So he had three barber shops.
Oh my goodness. You just took turns and went to different ones. That's cool.
And then in the back of here was J.C. Parmenter. They used to pump the septic tanks and sewerage.
Okay.
They're kind of in back of Colalas, but I'm trying to show you through here.
Through there. Okay.
Yeah. And one day he came and he was pumping out the cesspool, the septic tank, I should say, at my house up in Main Street. And I'm watching him do it, and my father pulled in from the hospital, and he got out, and he come over and he looked in at it, and he said, Doc, it may be blank to you, but it's gold to me. And I never forgot he said that. This was Preston Adams, the hardware store, and he was a nice old gent. And I had a pedal tractor. It looked like a little red farm tractor.
Yeah.
And you'd sit on it and pedals.
Right.
And it had a little rubber smokestack for the engine. And I came down here and I asked him would he make skid chains for my tractor. And he was the nicest person. And he had spools of chain, different sizes.
Yeah.
And he made skid chains, and I took the wheels off and had come down here and he put the chains on them. He's a nice old gent. And then, of course, it became Don Hitchens Hardware, and he was just as nice and always good to me.
Right.
And then, of course, Danny Colalla's Colalla Supermarket.
Right.
He moved from where I showed you up there, next to the Central House, and he came down here. And then over here was the car barn. That was the highway department. Docky Haywood. And in the car barn, they kept some town trucks, and they also kept two big piles, one of sand and one of salt, that they used in the wintertime. And back in the 50s, the snow would be, it used to snow like every 3 days. I mean, it was incredible. And the snow was piled up high, and we'd play King of the Mountain up on Main Street and over here. But this was the car barn for the trolleys. And then it became they took all the tracks out, wasn't used for that, and it was used as the highway department.
Oh, interesting.
And then, of course, they built the new highway department down on Wood Street. So now this was Joe Gassett's gas station.
Okay.
And Joe Gassett, this was a mobile gas station. And I got to tell a little story. To the side, there was a driveway. Over here was a platform. Right in this area. Right back here, there was a platform. And Joey Gassett, Johnny Gassett, Joe Gassett's sons, they would take the bottle gas full, and they'd whip them bottles and roll them, and they'd back the truck in. They had a stake truck with a hydraulic lift, and they would whip them bottle You know, and I as a kid, because I'd ride in the truck with them.
Oh.
And we'd do all the deliveries.
Oh my gosh.
Over here was a trailer. Was an Airstream trailer, and the man that lived in there was Barney McAuliffe.
Oh wow.
And Barney McAuliffe, I as a kid would come, and I'd say to Joe Gassett, Joe, is Barney back there? And he'd say, well, I don't know, you gotta go check. And I'd go and I'd knock on the door, and he'd tell me stories about early Hopkinton, the Indians,
Oh
the
my
shoe
gosh.
factories,
Oh, wow.
all about it just as a kid. And then he'd take me up to either the Rexall drugstore or Uses and get me an ice cream.
Oh.
Or, you know, that's the way they
nice.
were. It was
Yeah.
great. He was a great person,
Oh,
and I
wow.
want to remember. So
Oh, that's
why I'm
great.
doing that. Also, as kids, some old timers used to sit here and watch the activities of the town.
Oh.
Dan Nelligan, Kate Smith, Barney McAuliffe that I just talked about.
Right.
And you'd come along and say hello to them, and they might have their little nip in a brown bag and take a swig, and but anyway, they'd watch the activities of the town,
that's
and then
good.
they'd take you up and buy you an ice cream.
Oh, that's nice.
But
wow.
the point is, the elderly people were so good to the kids. You know,
That's
to take you
wonderful.
up and or tell you a story,
Right,
or try to
right.
teach you a little something. You know. This is Ernie Fecto's house. He was the president of the Framingham Trust Company.
Oh.
And I consider him a town father for all the services and organizations that he was involved with. I would definitely consider Ernie a town father.
Okay.
This was Rose's, his sister, Rose Fecto.
Oh, okay.
This was Rose's beauty salon.
Nice.
And then Lenny Chesmore that lived up in the corner, Dutchie Chesmore's son that I used to go to St. Mary's with.
Okay.
Okay, we used to come here and clean this,
Oh.
and he'd clean it for his aunt.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Now, when my dad first came to town, he wasn't, he didn't have a lot of money, and of course, people early on paid him in vegetables and this and that.
Right.
And my mother used to say, how are we going to pay the bills with vegetables? And they gave him chickens and all kinds of stuff, which was great. But my mother and father first came to Hopkinton. They lived here, and this was called the Brampton Apartment.
Oh, okay.
Francis Lockhart, that was a caretaker for the rectory, St. John's, and the church and the grounds, keeping all the grounds of the church.
Right.
He was a photographer, and he resided here also.
Oh, wow.
And my mother and father fixed the apartment up and stayed there. And of course, this is the rectory where the priest, Catholic priest, St. John's.
Wow.
And I used to come over here. My brother and I would come over as kids, and it was beautiful inside.
It is beautiful outside too.
And I'd go in, and the housekeeper, I'd go around the back, and I'm sorry, I forgot the lady's name. I should remember her. She was so good to my brother and myself. And she'd be cooking brownies or cookies or something. You know, she was always baking. And Joey and I, she'd get a glass of milk and give us cookies and brownies.
Oh, how wonderful.
And I'd come over and see the priest and talk to the priest. I must say this truthfully, going back without skipping a lot of years, but Father Lyons, from Father Lyons to Father Sullivan to Father Hodgkinson to Father Foley, through the years, I will say this, not one of those priests was ever out of line verbally or physically with my brother and I did frequent the place quite often.
Wow.
And it's a shame because there's a lot of good priests.
I'm sure there are. Yes, definitely.
It's been tarnished.
Yes,
and
it
that's
has.
unfortunate.
It definitely
But
is.
you see the columns again?
Yes, that was the style here.
And now we come to 17 Main Street.
Okay.
This is the house where I grew up with the
nice.
finest father, mother, and brother you could hope for.
So I've heard.
My mother decorated the house beautifully, and she dressed my brother and I we were probably the best dressed in town.
Okay.
A little plug. I know there was other kids that were dressed as good, but she made sure that my brother Joey and myself, we looked neat as a pin.
That's nice. That's nice.
Now my father, Dr. Joseph Annunziata, Doc Joe,
Doc Joe?
he
Okay.
practiced medicine here for 35 years.
Wow, 35.
Yeah, he had afternoon hours from 2 to 4, which was really 2 to 6. And he had night hours from 7 to 8, which was really 7 to 9:30.
Oh, wow.
And he also would see workers very early in the morning at 6,
Oh, good.
6:30,
That's nice.
so that he could take care of them and they could go to work.
Oh, wow.
The most
Cool.
unique thing about him, although he made house calls and all of that, was that when you were his patient, you were his family.
Oh, wonderful.
He truly cared about
Yes.
you, and that came across.
Yeah, I know it.
He was the best.
Oh, that's wonderful. I've heard so much about him, so I know that that's true.
Now, he started me out with go-karts,
Oh, wow.
and I went to a motorcycle and all kinds of cars, and the back door of the house was right here. And this was called the Rumpus. Well, back here, there was stairs going up here. This was the
Oh,
office
okay.
steps. This was the reception room that
Wow.
was loaded with people.
Okay.
He'd come out and he'd go next. And it was just unbelievable. There was no appointment. You just, you called him when you wanted to. You came when you wanted to. And half the time he'd remember if you called him and you were trying to get out of it, he'd go to your house.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, he'd take care of you. And this was what we call the playroom, the rumpus room. There was a
Right.
beautiful fireplace. But there was a garage here.
Oh.
And that's where I built a lot of the cars and became involved. Now, I used to take the go-kart and go down the driveway, come up the Priest driveway over here,
Okay.
up that sidewalk all the way to the church parking lot, and
Yeah.
I could drive the go-kart in the church parking lot, and then come back down. Now, eventually, I went out onto Church Street, to Maple Street, to Hayden Rose Street, to Ash Street, to down into East Hopkinton and all over the place. Of course, back then there was only one police cruiser at times, and so it was easy, and there wasn't that many
Yeah,
people on
yeah.
the road. It was a different era back then. But I can remember one story quickly. I went in a confession, and Father Hodgkinson was doing the confessional, and I go in, and I'm trying to kind of disguise myself. Not that I did anything that bad. But anyway, I went in, and I got all done, and he says to me, "Did you get the engine in your 55 Chevrolet? Because I heard you cursing last night." So he knew who I was. He loved cars. He was a
Oh,
motorhead.
that's wonderful.
Yeah. Over here. Now this was Al Paradise's house over here, or Paradise, and he was a TV repairman, and he lost an arm in World War II. And I used to say to him, how can you like hold a flashlight and use your hand and fix it? And I do this to this day. If I have to do something with both my hands, he was gifted could do it with one. I take the flashlight and I put it in the crook of my neck and I aim it, and that's what he used to do. And then he'd fix things.
Wow.
And people would go, "Well, I need a light," and they put the flashlight there. But that's the deal with
wonderful.
that.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to tell you one story about my dad. Of course, there's many stories about
I bet
him.
there are.
And Doc Joe.
Doc Joe.
Yeah, well, I was playing inside the house, and my brother was playing the piano.
And how old were you?
And I was probably, I'd say about 10 years
10,
old.
okay.
10 years old. And the policeman came to the front door, knocking on the door, and he had the police car out front with the light on.
Okay.
Now, the police cars in those days were a station wagon. Because what they do, they didn't have an ambulance. So
Right.
to transport people, they put them on a gurney and put them into a station
gosh.
wagon. Put the third seat down and make a
Yeah,
platform.
right.
Well, anyway, he came to the door, and I said, "Hi, how are you?" I forget if it was Tom Bravilio or one of the policemen that I knew, and I goes, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "This lady's going to have a baby, and I don't know what to do. Where's your father? Where's your father?" And he was all upset. So I knocked on the door, and I said, "Dad, and policeman's here, the lady going to have a baby or something. Well, I thought that you went to the hospital to pick up the babies. You know, I was maybe a little behind the time. But anyway, my dad came out and he says, go upstairs on the second floor, go to the linen closet, get a couple of clean towels and get me a face cloth and wet it, wet it, and come out to the car. The police car was right here, the station wagon. My dad's in the back with the lady, and, you know, he asked me for the face cloth. And I'm looking in the back window like this, and I'm going, this is really incredible. I'm saying to myself, I thought that you like went to the hospital to buy the baby, or you know, had a lottery or whatever. And my dad took the baby, picked it upside down, he slapped it gently. The baby started crying, cut the umbilical cord, tied it off, washed the baby down with the face cloth, took a towel, wrapped the baby in the towel and put it in the mother's arms. Then he says to the policeman, "You double parked, get out of here." And he goes in the office.
Oh
It's
my
incredible.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
Just one of many stories.
Oh, wow. It's amazing how much goes on in a
Yeah, that was
life of
quite a
doctor.
sight for a 10-year-old kid, I want to tell
my
you.
gosh. Was this wall this way with the little rocks and
Yes,
everything?
this wall was different way back in the 1900s, and then somebody changed it. It was like they used to just use long slabs of granite
Right.
to, you know, stack
Yeah,
them up,
yeah.
and then this appeared. This came
This-
later on.
Okay.
This was always here that I remember
That
as
you
a
remember.
kid. And the two Colorado blue spruce, one on each side, they were very
wow.
tall. And then a large one where that fire escape is, almost as high as the fire escape. Beautiful.
Oh,
It's a
my
beautiful house.
Oh, wow. That is wonderful.
This was Mr. and Mrs. Eagles,
Right,
the
okay.
elderly couple. And they were very nice people. He had the rhubarb patch in the back.
Okay.
He tried to convince me that rhubarb was tastes good, but
Good.
I don't know. It never went across.
Gosh.
And of course, living so close to the library, I used to frequent the
I hope
library
so.
all the time.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that.
Mrs. Betty Strom
Right.
and Mrs. Ellsworth,
Uh-huh.
the right-hand lady to Mrs. Strom,
Right.
and they were always very nice to me and
Oh,
very
that's
good to me.
wonderful.
And
good.
if a new book come out, you know, they'd be the first to come down.
Let you
Did you
know?
see this?
Oh,
Did you
that's
know
wonderful.
this? Yeah, they were very good to the kids. And then they had built the upstairs where that was all children's up there. But
Was it
now-
like that the whole time when you were growing up, or did that happen while you were a child?
It happened while I was a child that
okay.
I remember, the upstairs,
Right,
the addition.
right.
But it was beautiful, and then you could go up there. But mainly, I remember first coming
Downstairs.
here, because I was pretty young, was the first floor.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Another thing I wanted to talk about while I'm in front of the library was the trucks that were parked here. The truck drivers would go over to Brown and Smith to get the sandwich because
Okay.
they had such great sandwiches. But one of the trucking companies, the 10-wheelers, was Bayer Mangola.
Oh.
And Bayer Mangola was a big, like sand and stone and gravel.
Right, yeah, okay.
And they were out of Worcester, and they had beautiful T800 Ford 10-wheel dump trucks.
Ooh.
They were green with a red hood. The hoods were red, and they had a yellow sticker on the door, Bayer Mangola. And down in Ashland, where Trimount was, they had a big plant, pea stone and different types of
Right,
stone.
yeah.
And they did a lot of the construction on the Massachusetts Turnpike, building it.
Oh, wow.
And the trucks were absolutely spotless,
Oh, you
clean. I
love
just
those.
loved them.
Yeah.
And I used to sit here and I'd wait for them to come out and take off. But back then it was also called, the Massachusetts Turnpike was called the toll road.
The toll road,
The
okay.
toll road, and that's what people referred to it as.
Yep. So you remember when the library and the church were two separate buildings?
Yes, I do.
That's
They
interesting.
weren't connected.
Right.
I tell this, St. Paul's Episcopal Church, Ricky McMillan was the McMillan family lived down in Cedar Street.
Right, okay.
Basically across from, more towards where that convenience store is, right about in that area, behind the Exxon gas station, but on Cedar Street. And Ricky, I used to chum around with him, and he, of course, became the fire chief. And he used to clean this.
Oh.
And I came up with him one night, and he went in, was vacuum cleaning, and he used to clean the altar and different things. And he went in and he came back outside, and he says, why aren't you coming in here? Because I'm a Catholic. I can't go in there. He said, get in here. So I did.
You did.
Yeah.
Okay, that's funny.
Of course, the nuns probably would have told me I would have exploded or something.
Right.
But
it's not that bad.
no, not that bad.
Oh my goodness.
And over here in the Price Manor was Dr. Bobeck.
Okay.
He was a dentist.
Oh.
And I believe he came after Dr. Carnicelli, the other dentist. And he had his office in here.
Oh, that's interesting.
And up here in the corner is where my brother Joey, myself, the Chesmores, Dutchie Chesmore was a policeman that lived here. And he worked at Dennison Manufacturing, but he was a policeman. And his son, Lenny, that I sort of grew up with, would wait here for Johnson's bus lines. And Johnson's bus lines would come from Milford to pick us up to take us to St. Mary's and the Sacred Heart.
Oh, okay.
And he'd make different stops. He'd stop at Church Street to pick up Terry Nealon. And he'd stop at Fenton Street to pick up the O'Neills and the Mysons.
Wow.
And then he'd go down and pick up Mary Howard for Sunnyside Gardens. And he'd stop and pick up the Delettis. And they'd take us to Milford and into the bus. Now, the other bus, that was the Middlesex bus lines, they were in front of Don Hitchens Hardware.
Oh, okay.
And you could take that bus to Framingham to the train depot. Down across from the train depot, Lou Horton's had a sporting goods shop there, and that was the bus stop.
Wow.
Then he would go through Ashland to that train depot and stop there, so you could pick up the bus to Hopkinton in Ashland or Framingham. That later changed to Karlstrom's bus lines.
Oh.
But Middlesex bus lines, you had Mr. Cassidy and Mr. Mullins, and half the time they wouldn't charge you to ride on the bus.
Nice.
They were.
That's how you would get places.
Yeah, they were great.
Okay, so
Yeah, the Common was a great place to come and play as kids, and of course the fountain.
oh yeah, we got to hear.
Yeah.
So tell me about this.
Yeah, the fountain. The Claflin family lived over here on Park Street.
Okay.
And they were in the beginning of the the late 1800s, early 1900s. And this fountain was really, Charlie donated it, Charles Claflin, the son. He was the only son. He donated the fountain in the memory of his mother and father.
Wow.
He also left a trust to the town, and back then it was $1,000, and it was to make sure that water was turned on to the fountain and the Common would be taken care of. Of course, back in 1907, he didn't do that because he actually did it in 1905 that he bequeathed everything. That $1,000 was a lot of money. But anyway, this fountain had another pedestal and another dish, and another dish. It was very tall. And in the hurricane of 1938, a tree fell on it, and it knocked the top off, and it damaged it. And what they actually did was they just took the upper pedestal and moved it down. So instead of having two dishes, there's only one dish now. But that's how basically I remember it as a kid, because in 1938 I
Right.
wasn't around. But anyway, the water would be flowing. It was beautiful.
It would come over the edges.
Come over the air, it would flow over the
Oh,
dish
wonderful.
and shoot up in the air, and we as kids would swim in there and have a ball. I mean, it was great.
Oh,
It
how
was great.
nice. Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. I
And
wish
you
it
could
was-
wade and do whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of people visit the park, the common.
Yeah, sure.
Yep, the bubbler was always there, but the bubbler was more to the, I thought more to the edge of the road over there, you know, more towards the street.
Right.
This is, you know,
Yeah.
they moved it.
Okay. All right. Okay, so tell me some more.
And this
Oh.
wasn't here. Of course,
Oh.
they put the bricks in. No,
Oh,
this
they weren't. It was like paths, just dirt paths?
No, like hot top.
Oh, was it?
Asphalt.
Oh, I like the brick.
It was
yeah,
dirt
okay.
first, and I think they went to,
That's-
as time progressed in technology,
Right.
they ended up going back to
To
bricks.
brick. Okay, that's
Yep.
interesting.
And this is my father's rock
Oh.
at the town and the high school, and dedicated to him, and out of appreciation for 35 years of dedicating his
Wow,
life
that's
to
wonderful.
helping the townspeople. And I'll only say this in passing. There's a lot of great men, and they're not great doctors. And there's a lot of great doctors, and they're not great men. He was a great man and a great doctor.
Yeah.
And when you have both, he was the best.
So I've
For
heard.
sure.
And you're going to tell us about the tree?
Now, one thing as a kid that was great was this tree. And at Christmas time, this was loaded with lights. And up at the top was a big star. And you could see it from the other end of town. And I don't know if this, I'm pretty sure this was the electrical
Probably,
connection
yeah.
for it, and they'd throw the switch. But when this was lit up and you came into Hopkinton either way,
Right, you saw it.
this was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's
Yeah.
too bad that a lot of these things are just gone by the
Yeah,
wayside.
I wish we could still have something
Of course,
like
the
that.
tree, you know, is aged,
Yeah,
and it's
right.
lost some of its limbs, so it's not as really, you know, all there that it used to be.
Right.
Right in here, I think it was more towards where my father's stone was
Uh-huh.
the honor roll for World War II.
Two.
And it was a wooden sign, and it was, must have been, I'd say, yeah, about from here to there. From here
Right,
to
to
this
here,
one, yeah,
okay.
and it was probably, I'd say, 6, 7, 8 feet tall.
Right.
All in, and it was all ornamental on the sides. I mean, the wood was beautiful.
right.
And it listed in alphabetical order all the World War II veterans. And they were like in gold leaf letters.
wow.
It was really beautiful.
Oh, I
And-
think I might have seen a picture. I'm not sure.
yeah, we have a picture at the library. And I guess the post, you know, over the years.
Right, made out of wood,
Yeah,
yeah.
made out of wood, decayed.
it's
And,
too bad.
And they did away with it. But that was a beautiful sign. And of course, you have World War II here, Vietnam, the Korean conflict.
And here we have a statue.
And here's the statue.
Right. A new statue, but
This is a new statue, and it's beautiful. And he has the starter pistol. Now, every kid in Hopkinton back in the 50s, and this is the early 50s, came, and townspeople came to the marathon.
Right.
The problem with it back then was that the logistics of how they set everything up, and as a kid I remember, you know, very well. And there wasn't that many runners. You know,
Oh.
today there's thousands and thousands, and they go all the way back there.
Right.
At that time, they didn't. Basically, what happened is they had a makeshift podium. They brought it in on a truck. It was painted white, made out of 2x4s. It had stairs going up to a platform, and Walter Brown, there was a railing around it,
Right.
and Walter Brown would fire the starter pistol. Down on the bottom, they put a curtain around it to make it look fancy,
Right,
so it
yeah.
wasn't open. So it was an easy place for a kid to hide.
Uh-oh.
So anyway, I had gone down to the post office. This is in the early 50s. I had gone down to the post office, probably 54, 50, maybe 56, somewhere in there. And I had gone down to the post office and I asked Tom Brown if they'd let a kid start the marathon. And he said, no, that was out of the question. So I come up with this plan, and I decided that I could probably take a cap pistol. And so anyway, the first step was I went to DP Day store and I bought a West Clock Railroad watch. And of course, they ticked like a time bomb, but it had a second hand, and I needed a second hand if
Right.
I was going to do this. My father had purchased me a couple of 6-shooters, metal guns, from Jordan Marsh for a Christmas gift. So I went down to Osborne's and I got the stick caps, because this particular gun, you put a roll of caps. They used to come in a box and you broke them off,
Right,
red
right.
caps
I
in a
remember
roll,
that.
and you fed them
Yeah.
through and bang. So there wasn't enough noise, one cap. So you could buy a sheet of green stick caps. I took the stick caps and placed them one on top of another, and like 10 was no good, it misfired, 9, not so good, and 7 was good, it went off. So anyway, now I had the gun. So what happened was on Marathon Day, they brought in the podium. They also had a table, and they had a clock. And they used to radio into Boston, call in either through the police or the state police or whatever, and get the time. And the clock used to like work back like a basketball clock, you know, for the
Countdown.
yeah, the countdown. So anyway, I knew if I shot the cap gun off, you know, too early, nobody would believe anything. So I had figured about 20 seconds would be good. So everybody was lined up to go, and I'm underneath the thing, and out I come, and I shot the cap gun off, and bang, and as loud as I could yell, I said, go. And they were gone. They took off.
no!
Now, the state police had motorcycles, and the state police tried to form a V over here to gone. You can't, once they took off. I went through them, jumped over the fence, and I was down in Cedar Street on 85 before too many people knew what happened. Most people did not know that it even happened. Some people up front did know. But anyway, that's the folklore of the cap gun.
Oh my gosh. And did they shoot them?
I don't know because
you don't know because you weren't here.
I was leaving.
Good for you.
I was leaving at a high rate of speed. And I want to say
That's something somebody else should try.
No,
Okay.
I don't condone what I did,
Good.
and
Oh, my
I
gosh.
doubt seriously you could get away with it today.
No.
But I don't want to give anybody any ideas. Back in those days, things were much different. And I think it went down in the history book as an unidentified noise.
Oh,
I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to take a hop, skip, and a jump
Yep.
down memory lane about the town of Hopkinton, Main Street, and when I was a child and a young teenager, and some of the things that I did and encountered, and I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank you, Susan, very much. I want to thank the Hopkinton Public Library for all their support and effort. I want to thank John and Mark and Mike for HCAM TV. They're the greatest producers and filmmakers, bar none.
bar none. Well, we want to thank everybody too, and especially you for
I
sharing.
really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right.